Hey, it's Rick Highland with CI for Life podcasts. Welcome back. I have a special guest today, Neil Twa. Neil, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Rick. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that you're here. You've had a lot of success in e-commerce, and so I'm excited to hear about your story and how that might be relevant to listeners trying to grow their business. But
Yeah.
let's start with your background. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I won't bore you too long, and I'll get into some value content because I want people to, get something from today's call, even if, just to listen in and maybe glean some information about business or life or entrepreneurial or e-com or, all of these fun things.
Awesome.
But in simple terms, I've been involved in it since I dropped out of college to go get into e-commerce. I'm not terribly old, but the internet has changed things so fast in our world that by the time I was in college, which is a long story. I didn't actually want to go to college. I went to try to get into the Air Force Academy, but I'm too tall to get into the fighter jets, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and they wouldn't let me get in the cockpit. And I said, well, screw that. I'm going to college. So I went to college on a full ride music scholarship from classical jazz trumpet, and realized that by year 3, I was going to be living in a van down by the river. Now, at that point, it wasn't cool to live in a van down by the river. Today, that would be like the cool thing to do. So I was like a hipster before hip was hip.
Right. Chris Farley and you. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, me and him down in the van down by the river. Yeah. So I realized in my 3rd year, I had to do something, either stay in academia and try to glean what they were learning there, because there was nothing that they were teaching at this point. It was we were doing. We were literally installing Pentium computers and networking and that email, and this was all brand new and nobody knew what they were doing. Or I had to go to the corporate world where the other money was being spent. So I chose to jump out and go to the corporate world. And in that part, I kind of taught myself programming. I got lucky in life and ended up in the division of PCS as it was launching the first mobile phone inside of Sprint. And got to be a part of the first brick phone launch as that went to market. My little team of technical people was overseeing the knowledge management division that the employees and the call agents were using to try to support the calls as this was going to market, because it was growing so exponentially fast. They needed information, and we had a really small team working on about 50,000 web pages that were being used inside of that. So over the course of that career within Sprint, as we grew, I was the 5,000th employee pulled from some contractors and inside, and got employed in there to 80,000 employees by the time that I left, and 25,000 call reps. And so it turned into a monster organization of mobile devices. And got to oversee the knowledge management component and be a part of the building of knowledge management and artificial intelligence and this things of systemized knowledge base that was inside of Sprint. And with that knowledge and information and the first real knowledge management launch inside of an enterprise, IBM came in to help support the next level of growth with Sprint. The partnership took off really great. I learned very quickly in business, it's who you know that gets you there and what you know that keeps you there. And so that opportunity was basically figure out who I needed to know and then go learn what I needed to know in order to keep myself there. And so I got involved with IBM and ended up getting a handshake job in Armonk from a transfer there. And so I went to work for IBM. Got to fly around the world, basically helping organizations and enterprise learn knowledge management and implement it into their systems and people, processes, and technology and that kind of stuff. But I was learning a lot about latent semantic search engines and the web, and we were doing amazing things with giant systems, and got to work with the smart group at Watson and Armonk on the part of the division for the supercomputer there that we were working with. For knowledge management and human machine language learning and latent semantic technologies, and still a lot of stuff that we're using today, every day, from Amazon to Google, et cetera, was a part of what was coming out of these groups. Yeah. So I decided to leave. In 2007, IBM decided to say, hey, we want you to leave because we're moving your agency component to your division to Argentina. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go to Argentina. And they're like, well, you can apply for another job inside the company. And I said, this is this moment where I was like, had that division jumping out of college. What do I do now? There's this dividing moment. And like that jump I made from college, I said, I'm jumping out of IBM. I already understood the risk. So I went ahead and took it. If anybody says there's a perfect time to start a business, they're wrong. They're lying to you, because I jumped out, and the first thing that happened is I got married. In the process. And then my wife and we got pregnant about 8 months into that. She's an RN with a BSN. The medical issues we did not know suddenly hit her very hard in that pregnancy. And so she could no longer work. So I was starting a new business. We got married and we had a baby all in the same year. Wow. That really put a lot of challenges on our first year of marriage in the business, and went from very high incomes together to zero income all within a year. And while starting a new business. So these are challenges of entrepreneurial life. These are the way things go. This is the spaghetti of the entrepreneurial plate that nobody really understands, because they're moving, in this concept of linear fashion from 0 to 100. And what actually happens is you're just trying to straighten out one noodle on a plate of spaghetti. as you're trying to figure your way through
So
this.
many spaghetti noodles. Yeah.
So many noodles. So what do I do? What am I after? Who do I want to become? I wanted to be in e-commerce. That's why I got out of college, but I knew it wasn't ready to do that yet. And I had some side hustle things. I started a game server company on the side while I was working at IBM. And so I was always pushing to go outside. My entrepreneurial component didn't come from my father. He was a hardworking blue collar, lower middle class working guy. We had things we needed, but never what we wanted. So I had to go mow lawns to make money. So I'd always had that hustle mentality to get out there if I wanted to do more. And my mentor in life, eventually he accidentally died from a plane crash, but it was my uncle. And he was kind of the business entrepreneurial, started a boat company. So he gave me the ideas and the mindset of thinking very differently. And so I was always felt trapped in that corporate environment. I always knew I had to get out of it. It was never really for me. I was just waiting for that moment to just get out of it. So, and do whatever. But got into management consulting and run a management division that ended up subcontracting back to IBM, and got to do some really cool things with global seats and travel around and be on boards and be in the global side of a consulting, and grew up a small practice of people who supported public and private sector consulting at the management consulting level. Until I got into more affiliate marketing and online marketing to help grow that business, and found out I had an aptitude for paid media. So I got really good at buying traffic and arbitraging the cost of it as leads for businesses, and making businesses very successful by sending them lots of leads. And then realized because I was making them so much money, I needed to close that loop and actually finish the last part of it, which was my own offer, my own business component, my own brand. And I knew that e-commerce was where I wanted to go. So I started into that, which led me to Amazon in 2011. And Amazon was just that small, growing fast, agile business. And it suddenly was allowing physical products to be sold with Beyond Books. And they bought a company called FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon, and they implemented that into their merger, and they got this big infrastructure. And I'm like, well, great. They handle the customer, they handle the division, they handle the delivery. I just need to work on the logistics and the marketing and the business. I'm like, that's what I can do. This is great. Let me see what I can play around with. And found out that this engine was just literally a part of a latent semantic search engine code I recognized from my days at IBM. So they had taken and built a component of that latent semantic search engine into this artificial intelligence that's behind Amazon. They call it the A9 engine or the A10 engine now. That was literally driving knowledge, but the delivery of the knowledge inside of Amazon.com was the product. So they'd kind of taken it and shifted it to e-com. Very smart, very unique.
Yeah.
But I figured it out. I was like, oh my gosh, they're running the same engine we were building in the IBM days. So I went in, and for the first 18 months between 2011 and end of 2012, and just started throwing products at the engine, trying to see what it would do. Like I knew it was learning, and I knew it was looking at the titles and the graphics, and it was looking at the tech, and I'm like, I could figure this thing out. And I started to figure it out. And when it started to take off faster than I could fund it, I ended up finding a partner who helped me in the logistics and operational side. We kind of crossed paths together, and at the same time, we're like, hey, we want to try this together. And 10 years later, he's still my business partner, very wonderful man. He's the right half of my operational logistics finance brain. And we just started building brands together on Amazon because I could rank them fast, and he could handle the logistics and the management, the back end of the finance component. I was handling the front end marketing, logistics, ranking component, and together we just started crushing the snot out of it. Fast forward, we've been doing that for 10 years now, building brands and stuff. We've ran over $100 million in sales through FBA between ourselves and our collective businesses that we have under our client control or within our mentoring and coaching. The largest case study to date that we started with a company in 2014 sold for $72 million last year, which was an Amazon native brand. It's possible to grow it to that size and to see it work. It's possible for some of those models to fail, because Amazon is a tough market. One company just failed this last week because they were the largest FBA wholesaler and they couldn't keep their margins, and their SPAC completely fell apart, their special acquisition corporation. And so they went out of business because they couldn't keep the margins. On the other hand, a native private label branded business, it started on Amazon, a cosmetics company, sold for $630 million. So there are differences in the two models, and these are things people need to understand about why we do e-com in a private label branded business-driven model with brand registrations and trademarks and intellectual property. We don't just flip and wholesale products for profit in more of a pure capitalistic form, because it's not as profitable and it will run out. So we take a very business builder approach to this market. I believe that's had a lot of success in what we've gained together and with our clients over the years.
So I'm going to ask you to unveil those 4 or 5 key success factors to do it.
Absolutely.
You can head to the 630 versus the failure, but
yeah.
do I also coach a lot of millennials, and we have a lot of millennials that listen, and
Awesome.
coach them on career management. I have a course on Teachable called Millennial Money, Rich and Happy. And basically, my advice is exactly what you did. Go in like a company like IBM or whatever field you want to go to, learn as much as you can,
Yes.
and then go out on your own. That's where real independence, well, but you
Yeah.
have to, obviously there's high failure rates and there's lots of lessons there. But
Yeah.
before we jump into those lessons and how to do it right, what career advice do you have for millennials as they're striving to find their path?
Mm.
Anything come to mind there as you think just career counseling?
Yeah, I mean, there's this idea I think that we all have to some degree in terms of ambition and growth and what we feel we may be worth and we're not necessarily being paid now. I think there's a balance between understanding patience and tenacity in your place where you currently can succeed, and that success in that place, wherever it is, wherever you're being paid, wherever you currently feel you're getting value, is something that you need to find your happiness in for the time being, right? Because honestly, you're not going to find your joy in a job. Nobody does. At the end of the day, joy will come through reward, fun, and profit and working with good people. And that is typically something you're doing on your own in a creative state, a purposeful state, a meaningful and meaningful impact to the environment, to people, to other things that are around you that give you purpose and drive beyond just a paycheck. Because remember, most people, as Warren Buffett said, are one paycheck away from poverty. And because of that stress and concern that you constantly have, you are usually trying to seek something above your current station. And instead, you're not focused on doing right where you are right now and allowing others to lift you up into that next station. If you keep trying to push yourself into that next station, you're typically going to find that nobody wants to help that person, right? People want to help other people, and people leave managers, not companies. So you're going to look at where you are and the person that's just above you. And what you want to do is find out a way to like them. You may not like them, you may not like where they are, you may not appreciate their management style or things, but you need to find out, because remember what I said a minute ago, it's who you know that gets you there, and it's what you know that keeps you there. I'm not saying kiss butt and brown nose. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't misread what I'm saying. What I'm saying is find a way to add value to that person's life. Find a way to add value to what they're doing. And from that, they will reward you, because they are the ones that are gatekeeping your next step within that business. The lateral jumping of business models, okay, and I've done that in the past, is one way to level up your success or level up your position. But just remember, you may be jumping from the fire into the frying pan. You need to be careful with lateral moves just because of financial reasons only. That will just be one other reason to steal your happiness and joy in life. You may not recognize it initially because you're going after what feels like a new opportunity or more money, but in actuality, you might just be jumping into the fire. You need to be careful with that. Be strategic. Think a little bit into the 3 to 5 years, but also remember it's the daily, weekly, monthly activities that will make all the difference in where you succeed and where you go, right? If you stay so, future minded, you're of no earthly good today, and today is sufficient unto itself. So work on just what you're going to do today and put it to bed at night, and don't wake up with it the next day. If you carry that baggage, it will add up every day, every week, every month, and pretty soon you're carrying a 100-pound bag of luggage behind you that no one else wants to pick up.
Man, I hope millennials will listen. That was amazing advice on both how to do well in your current job, if it's in a company, that the idea of patience and tenacity, but get very good at your craft, right?
Get very good at your craft.
And make your boss successful. If your choice is to stay in that company,
yes,
find out what's important, make them successful, and become very good. I mean, you'll be super valuable in that company or in your startup.
Well, and you might find that person's willing to help you out of the company when the time comes, because they may be fighting the same struggle as you are at just a different level above you. And if you can get into that bit of camaraderie, and I'm not even talking about friendship, because there's a balance between professional and friendship also, that will allow them to also understand that if you're trying to succeed, they don't want to necessarily hold you back. If there's a conflict, and you may feel that conflict, and you may be a part of resonating that frequency of conflict between them, you need to figure out how to change that frequency. And usually you're the one in control of that. It's your mind, it's your mouth, and it's what comes out of your heart and comes through your mouth is what's going to make the difference in whether or not that person receives that information and is operating on a frequency that you are, or whether or not you're just clashing with them.
Okay, in your case, how did you know it was the right time in 2007 to hop out, and then 2011 to make the transition? Was there some analysis you did? It was something in your gut? Like I love.
Call it a gut feeling. No, if I stopped to analyze it, Yeah, no, literally, it just like I realized I could no longer stay in the pain of the position that I was in with my career in college. I knew that I'd reached a position in my corporate life where I could no longer stand the pain of being in that position. Pain typically makes challenge, and challenge makes change. And if you're not willing to accept the pain and the challenge where you are, you're never going to change. And that is actually going to grow you into a scarcity mindset,
Yeah.
of one in which paycheck to paycheck is literally a poverty driven mindset. Okay. And at the end of this, what you have to realize is there is abundance. While things scream recession or scream challenges or scream there's no money, and maybe because of where you're setting in life right now, you may feel like there's no money or access to it. That is actually a perception of your reality. It is not actual reality in someone else's perception. So from where I stand, there's more than enough money. There's stupid money everywhere. There's money available to people to do stupid things with. Not that you should do that. The end result is there is plenty of money, and you don't have to look too much farther than the corporations or the world we live in our government to see how much money is flowing everywhere. In some cases, very stupid money, but there is a lot of money out there. So if you can change your realization from scarcity to abundance, you will change your perception of your current position and realize certain risks you're setting in right now are actually more risky for you than taking a risk on a job or a side hustle or building up a business and getting that either that capital or whatever's necessary to go out and do that. You need to understand those risks. There's 4 things, as we talked about a minute ago, that are going to make or break that success. If you want me to kind of start breaking some of that down, we can go after that.
Great career advice, by the way, but let's move on to.
Yeah.
How do you
Well, the career advice is, the career advice is really for some of them who maybe feel like they're more corporate driven. And the idea of entrepreneurialism isn't really in your blood. It isn't in your DNA. And it may not be something you feel extremely comfortable ever wanting to do. Just understand there are risks to both those mentalities. There's risks to both of those tracks. There's rewards. I know personally that if I stayed in IBM, ultimately, I can envision that this is not something I will ever hand to my children. It is not a legacy and a heritage to hand them a 40-hour to 80-hour week job. What I wanted to hand it to them was... You
realized you wanted to do that. And so
didn't want to do that. I wanted to hand them the opportunity of knowledge and power and an abundance of creating and building something that they have some control over, that isn't just time-based and trading time for money, but has opportunities beyond what they maybe currently see or within their current vision, only because of what they see is what's available to them now. But as you level your groups, level your network, and level changes, you suddenly start to see the different levels of abundance as people see them very differently in their time and money aspects, right? And I have been privy and blessed to be in the company of some people who are very wealthy. And because of that, it's helped me to see very different approaches to money and thinking that have gotten them to where they are. But it's not something that no one can't learn. It's just you have to reach those different levels of comfort in your comfort zone. So you have to understand how to approach it. And with e-commerce, I found it as an alternative to wealth building. Okay, it's an alternative wealth building process. All right, and I can return money under more control in my business, deploying it into physical assets, than giving that money to a hedge fund manager or putting it into the stock market and taking yesterday's hit.